Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So, thanks for the opportunity to given to me, and we are from Group 8. I will be present our material about community language learning. So, before that, I will introduce myself and the member of my groups. So, the first one, my name is Tristina Sinta Sawitri as the moderator and the first speaker, and the next is Swatun Hasana as the first speaker, and the next is Nurianti as the second speaker, and the next is Debbie Asisa as the first speaker, and the last is Alif Maulana as the third speaker. So we are present about the material community language learning. So let's go.
So we started from a demonstration of a method called Community Language Learning, or CLL. Based upon the more general counseling learning approach to adult education developed by Charles Curran, CLL calls upon teachers to become skillful understanders of their students as whole persons. And becoming a skillful understanders means recognizing and accepting the struggles students face as they attempt to internalize another language. So we've come to the first one, video demonstration lesson plan. It has teaching points and some objectives. So the teaching point is meaning and pronunciation of student-generated vocabulary for describing the house. And then the objectives are, the first one is students will generate, clarify the meaning of and practice the pronunciation of a list of vocabulary words needed to describe the house. And then the second one is students will create an image of their home in a fellow student's mind through words. And then the last one is students will learn about each other's world, and those strengthen the learning community in the classroom. So the next one is video lesson steps in sequence. So the first step is setting the scene. So in here, the teacher tells the student what they are going to be doing during the next 2 days of class while the students listen. And then the teacher invites the students to think about their house in their country or in the US, and to visualize the setting, the rooms, the objectives, the feelings, the smells, the people, etc. In their minds. And then the students close their eyes if they are comfortable doing, and imagine their houses. And the next step is oral description. So in here, the teacher asks the students to work in pairs and to take turns describing their houses to each other, and each student works with the person next to him or her. And the teacher tells the student to allow time for each person to speak, and tells them how much time they have to do this. And then the teacher reminds the student when it is time for the second person to speak, and later that they have 1 minute left. And then the third step is word list. So in here, the teacher asks students to make a list of the special words they need to describe their houses. Students individually write a list of words in their notebooks. They write as many as they can or want to, and then the teacher invites the students to call out the words from their list, which she writes as a group list on the board. Students randomly call out words of their choice. And then the teacher asks the students to first read the group list silently and think of the meanings of the words, and then to ask for clarification on any new words or words they are uncertain about. Students can choose to call out words, to remain silent, and to offer explanation or examples, or to simply listen. And then the teacher repeats the explanation or examples provided by the students, and then she provides explanation or examples herself only if the students cannot do so. And then the next step, we have an example, which is pronunciation practice with the human computer. So in here, the teacher invites the students to practice the pronunciation of the group list correctly and explains the procedure for doing so. Each word is read out loud by the students and then repeated by the teacher only once. They read the words in the order they are on the board. And then the teacher invites the student to practice the pronunciation individually and explains the procedure for doing this, which is known as the human computer. A student raises his hand to indicate he has selected a word to practice. He then says the word out loud and the teacher repeats it. The student can say the word and as many times as he wishes, and then the students turn off the computer by remaining silent. The teacher is always the last one to repeat the word. And then the last step is writing practice with the human computer. So in here, the teacher asks the students to individually write one sentence describing their house using words from the group list and from the individual list in their notebooks. Some students may choose to be able to write more than one sentence in the time given, and then the teacher invites the students to read their sentences aloud and explains that the human computer will work in the same way as it did for the vocabulary, but this time with sentences. So the teacher will repeat the sentences after the students, making any necessary correction, but will not draw any direct attention to such changes. She has explained that she will be doing this while giving the direction for the activity, and then students volunteer to read their sentences by raising their hands. They can read it as many times as they wish, and the teacher will repeat it each time. And then the teacher invites the students to comment on how they felt during the class after explaining that she will collect their list of vocabulary words and sentences in order to use them as material for the next day class. Students can make any comments they wish, and then the teacher shows she has understood how they are feeling by summarizing or paraphrasing what they have said.
My name is Milyanti. As the second speaker, I will be present our material about teacher training discussion questions based on the video. The first is the strengths you perceive in it, as well as the concern you have about the approach. What are your reasons for each? The second, identify list to specific ways in which the teacher put into practice each of the 4 basic learning assumptions of CLL. Namely, students are whole persons. People learn best when they feel secure. Students should have the opportunity to generate the language they wish to learn, and last, the teacher should understand what the students are feeling. The third, recall the sequence or steps of the lesson. For each step, list what the teacher did and what the students did. Compare your list with the lesson steps in video lesson. After compiling and comparing the lesson steps, look at each step and see if you can say why the teacher did what she did. Did the teacher correct the students? Try to recall specific examples from the lesson. Do you feel students can learn from this type of correction? Why? Why not? How do you correct students in your classroom? 5. When the students work in pairs individually, what were they doing at this time? Do you feel these are productive ways for students to work? Why? Why not? What types of individual and pair work activities do you do in your classroom? 6. The teacher did not call on students. Students were free to volunteer. Why do you think that this was done? What do you do in your classroom? Why? 7. Watch the section of the demonstration lesson in which the students are commenting on how they felt during the lesson. Unless or 8. The students generate the material or vocabulary to be worked on in this lesson. How have you worked with student-generated material in your classroom? Okay, thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now, my name is Alif Maulana, and now it is my turn to explain my part uh, about project. I explained about teacher training activities based on the video. Now, based on the video, we have to think about something else that makes us feels like in home. So the first thing that teacher needs to do is ask the students to remember their home and think about it. After that, they have to work on some vocabularies that students need to describe about their home. For example, pronunciation and intonation. The third one, they have to tell to the person next to them and tell them about their home. After that, take a moment and take a piece of paper and write some of the special words that can describe your home. The second one is the teacher writing on the board. After the students tells about their home, students will now call out the word and the teacher will write it on the board. For example, clean, fence, and peaceful. After that, the teacher need to ask the student if there are some words on the board that they don't understand. After that, the teacher will ask the student to do some pronunciation and the teacher will correct it. And the fourth one is the student will call out the one sentence to work with the pronunciation, but what this time is not what's on the board, but it's on their paper. Now, the third one, after they write the sentence in the paper, the students will call out the sentence, and the teacher will correct it, and the teacher will act like a computer to correct their grammar. After that, the teacher will give some works on the paper and on the next meeting. So, teacher will help them again to fix their pronunciation and the grammar itself. At the end of the meeting, teacher will ask the students about how they feel about the meeting, and after the students answer it, they may leave the class. That's all for my part. Thank you very much.
Extensions of the demonstration: listen, interactive communicative activity, copying and correcting. The first, type up a corrected list of all the words and sentences which the student generated in class and handed in from their notebook at the end of the first class and the house. Give each student a copy of the list. This list can also be written on the large sheet of paper posted on the wall and used during classes. The second, give the student time to copy this list into their notebook if they are at the stage in their learning where they prefer to correct their own work. Type the list of sentences or written on the board or a large sheet of paper as actually written by the student. And the three, have the student work in small group to correct their written work. They can then finalize their correction in the large group. With your support, this list can be used in the activity which follows.
categories. The first, as the student to categories the vocabulary list in a way that makes sense to them, and then label two categories or group of words. For example, the first, things outside the house, fence and height. The second, feeling peaceful and cozy. And the last, room in the house, kitchen and bathroom. This can be done as a whole class or in small group. If it is done in small group, the group can compare lists. Each group can also report its categories to the whole class if the class is large. Instruct the group to report on only one category, the one with the most or less word, the most unusual age. If the categories is done in the whole class, invite a student to add a new word to the categories as a final activity. And the second, write 10 to 50 sentence. Write 10 to 50 sentence. One, the blackboard that contain function word structure useful in describing the house. If possible, the sentence should be from the one written by the student in the previous class. The class practice the sentence using the human computer. Working on whole sentence allow a work on intonation.
Okay, the next material is pronunciation and intonation practice. So the first one is ask the students to work in pairs using their individual copies of the vocabulary and sentences from the previous class. And the second one is, if the words or sentences are not at the board or posted a large sheet of paper, one student sits facing the board or paper while the other sits with his or her back to it. Okay, the next is concentration. Each group of 4 students make a set of concentration card. Notebook or other sheet paper can be cut up and used if index cards are not available. Students can make sets of items in different categories. The first one is vocabulary, and their illustration word simple is tree. And the next is vocabulary, word and translation. The word simple is chairs and zilla. Okay, so the next is divided sentence. So the word simple is, there are 6 rooms in my house. I live in the country. So the first one is ask the students to make 10 matches that training cards or items from the category they have chosen. So the second one is they shuffle the card, lay them face down, and play a game of concentration. The description of this game in the Zaggestupedia lesson in video 2. So the third is, when they finish one game, they can exchange these trees with another group and continue playing. The next material is grammar practice. So present a mini grammar lesson on the special structure that needs working on. The first one is use symbol generated by the students. As the students write 5 sentences describing their house or the classroom using the special structure in their sentences. Okay, the second one is working in groups. They can share or correct their sentences and learn volunteer to read the sentences to the whole class. So the next material is for pens. The first one is present a floor pen of your house with rooms and object labeled and then describe it to the class, including how you feel about being at home, the people who live there, and then so on. The second one is ask your students to draw a labor floor plans of their homes, which may be a room, apartment, a dormitory, and so on. Next, in a pair or groups of three, they explore their home. After this group work, invite the students to add new words to the vocabulary list from the provision lesson. The third one is invite one or two students to volunteer to present their floor plans to the whole group in the way you did at the beginning of the class. Okay, so the next material is written composition. So the first one is as a follow-up activity, as the students write a paragraph or source composition describing their home, which may be real or imaginary, using the vocabulary generated by the class. So the second one is have the students draw a picture and or poor pen showing what they have describing in words. Invite the curriculum and read each other's description. They should what I praise to correct the word before posting and reading. So the third is if the class is large and while posting is not possible, the student can form groups of four to share and read in this way. So the fourth is after everyone has had time to read the conversation, lead a brief discussion on what the students have learned about each other's homes and about the vocabulary needed to describe the term. So this explaining material from the group E. So thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.